Here's what's coming up on the world today. U.S. accuses Russia of reckless act after an American drone crashed into the Black Sea following an encounter with Russian fighter jets. Snowstorms hit northeastern United States. Plus, former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan's house fumes with tear gas for the second day as protesters clash with security forces. Hello and welcome to The World Today on Channels Television. I'm Anne Nwawadu. We begin with northeastern states like New York, Vermont and Massachusetts felt the latest effects of winter storms hitting the United States. In the northeast and New England, the storm had already accumulated 20 inches of snow in the Berkshires, the western Massachusetts and northern Connecticut, and 8 inches had fallen in New York. As many as 267,000 homes and businesses have been without power in the northeastern part, including New York and New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. In New York, for example, Governor Kathy also declared a state of emergency for 37 counties, covering Albany, central New York, and Mid-Hudson and North Country regions. As part of Miller Hill Mall's rooftop has collapsed in Minnesota, aerial footage from the scene showed the collapsed roof covered in snow and snow seen inside part of the mall. According to statements by the Duluth Fire Department, the collapse happened at approximately 9 a.m. near the restaurant, and there were no injuries immediately reported. The mall was evacuated and authorities are asking residents to stay away from that site. Duluth's National Weather Service reported 12.5 inches of snow over the weekend. Meanwhile, officials in Central California are monitoring roads, highways and bridges for flood damage after the latest in series of atmospheric river storms spread across California. On the border and monitoring Santa Cruz counties, the floodwaters from the Pajaro River that spilled into the farmlands from the level beach over the weekend had forced officials to close a nearby highway that connects Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. According to the National Weather Service, up to 10 inches of rain were forecast in some areas of California, while in higher elevations of 5,000 feet and above, where snow accumulations were already rooftop high, up to 3 feet of fresh powder was expected to drop. 9 atmospheric rivers already lashed California in rapid succession, coming from late December through to mid-January, triggering widespread flooding, mudslides, and pushing surf. At least 20 people have died in that incident. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins me now for more. Hello, Maria.
Hello.
Well, we've seen severe winter storms have lashed cities across the United States since February this year. A major snowstorm has already hit northeastern United States. Give us an update of what the situation is like at the moment.
Yes, we're talking about 18 inches of snow in some parts of the Northeast, specifically New Hampshire, upstate New York. Paralyzing driving conditions. Many roads are not passable due to the winter storms. And the other challenge with these nor'easters is that they bring a lot of wind. So with the wind, you're talking about downed trees. You're talking about trees that have an exorbitant amount of snow on them. And so when they do fall, they cause quite a challenge in the community. And so this is something that's a little unprecedented at this time of year. It's a bit late to have these type of nor'easters, in addition to the fact that they are a bit on the extreme end and have caused major flight cancellations.
Now, in some areas like upstate New York, we've seen heavy snow. It could fall at a rate of 2 inches with high winds, making travel almost impossible, or even impossible actually, and causing power outages. What are authorities advising, and what's the situation like as we speak?
Yes, you're exactly correct. When you talk about that type of snow, falling at that rapid rate, so much per hour, you are talking about conditions where the state safety patrols for the highways are asking people to stay home, to stay in. This means that many businesses are closed, governments typically closed down. So that's really where they are. They're really asking people to stay off the streets so they can clear the streets and make them passable once we do see that the full snowfall has completed. And so that's where many of the government officials are asking that individuals stay home and obviously limit your travel to upstate New York at this time, where there were thousands of flights canceled yesterday.
And what's the situation in California looking like? Because, I mean, that has also witnessed lots of problems in terms of weather conditions.
Yes, Northern California has dealt with atmospheric rivers, which are intense flooding, having about an inch of rain falling per hour. And when you talk about those type of rainstorms, and when you're looking at what they already have been dealing with the flooding, and it's now spread to the middle and southern regions of California, we could potentially see that many roads, as they've already seen, have been covered. You also have many bridges that become weakened as a result of this, and obviously extensive amounts of those creeks and rivers that currently exist in the state of California that are overflowing, which then causes damages to homes and local businesses.
Well, we know the floods in California have forced officials to close nearby Highway 1, which is California's scenic north-south highway that runs along the Pacific coastline, which makes it a very important route. Have officials made provisions for alternatives for people who might want to travel that path?
Yes, there are other alternate routes. Unfortunately, that highway, Route 1 you're speaking of, is one of the main ways to get up and down of California. And there are some parts along the coastline there that are not going to be able to be reached due to the fact that there is only one way to enter to those communities. So those, obviously, at this time, are going to have to wait until the water does subside and they are able to get the highway clear from the flooding.
All right. Thank you very much. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, thanks for your time on The World Today. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with his Fiji counterpart in Nadi today to discuss regional security, just one day after unveiling details of the AUKUS submarine program in San Diego with the leaders of the United States and Britain. It is expected that the Albanese will press Canberra's message that its $245 billion nuclear-powered submarine program does not violate its nuclear non-proliferation commitments. Australia is party to a nuclear-free zone treaty with 12 other South Pacific nations, including Fiji, in a region where sensitivity over clear nuclear weapons is high because of the effects of nuclear weapons tests by the United States and France. Australia will buy 3 U.S. Virginia-class submarines early next decade before shifting to production of a new AUKUS submarine based on a British design from 2040. British Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt left Downing Street carrying the iconic red box before travelling to Parliament to present the government budget for the year 2023. Mr. Hunt is announcing how he will try to speed up the world's 6th biggest economy after the shocks of Brexit, a heavy COVID-19 hit, and double-digit inflation left it lagging behind its peers. It has dismissed calls from other lawmakers in the ruling Conservative Party for big tax cuts now to boost their fortunes before an election which is expected in 2024. And still in Britain, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said that the new migration bill proposed by the government to prevent migrants to enter the country illegally will not compromise UK support for victims of modern slavery. Speaking during the weekly Prime Minister's question session in Parliament, Mr. Sunak had reiterated his determination to hold those who travel to Britain on small boats and make their asylum claims inadmissible.
from the Chancellor later this afternoon. We have a proud record of supporting victims of modern slavery, and thousands of victims are supported every year here in the UK, and that will not change as we grip illegal immigration. Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right that we do need to encourage long-term investment in the domestic workforce. We'll hear more from this in the Chancellor later this afternoon, but the Department for Work and Pensions is directing support at sectors with labour shortages like construction and social care, and our new skills boot camps are part of a dramatic rebooting of our skills system to support workers to get the skills that they need. Mr. Speaker, thanks to the actions of this government, what we have provided is over £1,300 to help families with their energy bills over the last year. Now, I won't want to preempt what the Chancellor is going to say later, but this is a government that is committed to continuing to help people with the cost of living, and that's what you'll hear later on.
Welcome to the Leader of the Opposition.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said he'd announced a plan that he hopes will speed up Britain's stagnation economy, also including childcare and tax reforms to get more people into work and corporate tax breaks to boost low levels of business investment. Saying the world's sixth biggest economy was now expected to avoid a recession this year, even if it's still set to contract. Hunt also said that he would extend help for households hit by soaring energy bills and freeze a tax on fuel.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in the face of enormous challenges, I report today on a British economy which is proving the doubters wrong. In the autumn, we took difficult decisions to deliver stability and sound money. Since mid-October, 10-year gilt rates have fallen, debt servicing costs are down, mortgage rates are lower, and inflation has peaked. The International Monetary Fund says our approach means the UK economy is on the right track. Today, the Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts that because of changing international factors and the measures I take, the UK will not now enter a technical recession this year. Despite continuing global instability, the OBR report today that inflation in the UK will fall from 10.7% in the final quarter of last year to 2.9% by the end of 2023. That is more than halving inflation. High inflation, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the root cause of the strikes we've seen in recent months. We will continue to work hard to settle those disputes, but only in a way that does not fuel inflation. I recognise that even though wholesale energy prices have been falling, there is still enormous pressure on family finances. Some people remain in real distress, and we should always stand ready to help when we can. So after listening to representations from Martin Lewis and other experts, I today confirm that the energy price guarantee will remain at £2,500 for the next 3 months. This means the £2,500 cap for the typical household will remain in place when energy prices remain high ahead of an expected fall in prices from July. This measure will save the average family a further £160 on top of the energy support measures already announced. The second measure concerns over 4 million households on prepaid.
Over to the United States, where U.S. President Joe Biden has issued an executive order that reinforced background checks for gun buyers and what the White House is promoting as the most comprehensive policy the president can enact without Congress. The order also claims to strengthen federal support for red flag laws passed in 19 states and the District of Columbia that intends to stop gun sales to people legally deemed dangerous to themselves or to others. With more than 40,000 U.S. gun deaths per year, Mr. Biden is betting voters in the 2024 presidential election will embrace more proactive gun control rules.
Today, I'm announcing another executive order. They'll accelerate and intensify this work to save more lives more quickly. First, this executive order helps keep firearms out of dangerous hands, as I continue to call on Congress to require background checks for all firearm sales. And in the meantime, my executive order directs my Attorney General to take every lawful action possible to move us as close as we can to universal background checks without new legislation. It's just common sense to check whether someone is a felon, a domestic abuser, before they buy a gun. The executive order also expands public awareness campaigns about the red flag orders, laws, which my son, before he died, Attorney General in Delaware, was a great proponent of and instituted. Second thing it does, the executive order ramps up our efforts to hold the gun industry accountable. It's the only outfit you can't sue these days. It does that by calling out for an independent government study that analyzes and exposes how gun manufacturers aggressively market firearms to civilians, especially minors, including by using military imagery. And it directs the Attorney General to publicly release alcohol, tobacco, and firearms inspection reports of firearms dealers who are cited for violation of the law. Executive order improves federal coordination to support victims, survivors, and their families and communities affected by mass shootings.
Meanwhile, Mr. Biden traveled to Monterey Park, where 11 people were killed during a celebration of the Lunar New Year, to promote the executive order, which also asks the Federal Trade Commission to analyze how gun manufacturers market firearms, including to minors. Despite the wet weather, community residents gathered near the Boys and Girls Club Youth Center to get a closer look at the president and his motorcade. According to media reports, family members of the mass shooting victims were in attendance, including Brandon Say, who courageously disarmed the Monterey Park gunman at Lai Ballroom, in potentially preventing further killings from him.
I think that we are on the road to healing, but it takes a collective effort. And I think that the visit here today, and I know that Vice President Kamala Harris came as well, that having these individuals come again to our community shows that the nation cares. And I think that that is incredibly important for Asian Americans who have long struggled with the notion of fitting in, assimilating in society.
Inside, there was a lot of our community leaders, elected officials, and I think a lot of the community really cared about this, and we're very grateful for President Biden to show up here, because it's been such a tragedy in our community, and we're grieving, and it's part of our culture that we don't really openly talk about how much we're suffering. So for him to actually see us and make the trip out here, it means a lot for us. And there are actions being taken at the city and county, state, and all the way to White House at all these levels to actually bring forward actions to end gun violence. So I think it was very such a powerful message for us to receive that, and we're very grateful for that.
The atmosphere really ran the gamut. There were people that were very informal and relaxed, and yet there were people that were grieving. And it's clear that this president coming at this time brought back memories of that fateful event where all the lives were lost. And there was great anticipation. Virtually everyone that I saw stood to their feet when the president came and gave him a standing ovation. And a high point was when he recognized Brandon Tsai, the young man from Alhambra who wrestled the gun away from the killer, who actually could have doubled the carnage in Alhambra in addition to Monterey Park. And that was really the high point for me, to see the president acknowledge his bravery.
tear gas fumes you see there rising from Imran Khan's home for a second day as supporters clashed with security forces that had come to arrest the former prime minister for not showing up in a case against him related to selling state gifts. A lower court in the capital, Islamabad, had last week issued an arrest warrant against Mr. Khan for defying orders to present himself in court to defend charges that he unlawfully sold state gifts given to him by foreign dignitaries while he was prime minister from 2018 to 2022. Mr. Khan said in an address, if they cannot give me security, they should transfer my case to some place where I can get security. There has been one attack on my life already. The violence that unfolded as a result added to the instability in nuclear-armed Pakistan, which is now struggling with an economic crisis and awaiting an International Monetary Fund bailout. And finally, on the program, with China reopening its borders to foreign tourists for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic, businesses in Shanghai say they are looking forward to welcoming tourists back after the 3-year absence. The resumption of visa issuance for tourists marks a border push by Beijing to normalize two-way travel between China and the world, having withdrawn its advisory to citizens against foreign travel in January this year. Tourist industry insiders, however, do not expect a massive influx of visitors in the short run or even a significant boost to the economy. Back in 2019, international tourism receipts accounted for just 0.9% of China's gross domestic product. This is where we draw the cuttings on the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Stay safe.